Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to one of the first webinars of the year for the Northwest Region IIRSM branch. Pleased to have you all with us. Thank you for spending your lunch hour with us and giving us the time to have a look at what we've got on offer today. We'll be talking about arborists and SSIP accreditations, which is quite a new thing. So our residence expert, Don, is going to talk us through the information. And just before we get started on that, just wanted to let you know that the IIRSM Risk Excellence Awards, they're still open for nominations. Doesn't close until 5 p.m. on the 7th of February. So anyone who wants to nominate any companies, individuals, for any of the categories, please do go onto our page and have a look. So again, thanks very much for joining us, and I will hand over to you now, Dom. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, let's well, welcome everyone to the SafeArb webinar. What we're going to look at in this webinar is what is arborists and what are the issues safety-wise revolving around ARB. So in this seminar, we'll look at the SafeArb scheme, the disciplines within SafeArb, what arboriculture is, and where the activities for arboriculture is carried out. Once we've done that, we'll look at the risks in each of the settings. And we'll also touch on the accident statistics, as it's quite a hazardous industry to work in. We'll look at the risks to the arborist, some of the general preventative measures, and then we'll touch on a bit of the regulations and guidance and some of the hot topics as well. So, SafeArb, this was a scheme that was created by industry. They came to 3 Court 2 and they asked us to write a bespoke standard. They believe the current offerings within the industry wasn't sufficient to better their safety processes. SafeArb is a truly independent accredited scheme where it holds both SSIP accreditation and UCAS accreditation under 17020 as an inspection body. Various stakeholders that were involved in the setting up was myself. There was a Dr. Keith Lloyd-Jones from Audit and Comply Executive, and Mr. Gary Scammell from Gristwood and Toms, and this is just amongst others who were involved in the original drafting and the accreditation of SafeArb. So again, our auditors are independent of the industry, and that is important, as biases can come in when people are being audited or organisations are audited by their peers, and there is also confidentiality issues. All auditors in SafeArb are NEBOSH qualified, ordinarily to level 6, and they also hold SSIP lead auditor qualifications. Again, SafeArb is the only independent arborist safety scheme that holds both accreditations, and audits are not carried out remotely due to the hazards within the industry. Every audit has an on-site element where we verify what the company says they do. And SafeArb is recognised by both industry and local authorities. So when we look at the SafeArb scheme, we look at various disciplines, and an organisation, an arborist organisation, can look at one or more of these disciplines on the left-hand side of your screen. And there's felling ground level, so felling of trees ground level, there's stump grinding, and each of these disciplines have their own associated hazards. Reactive response is quite an important one because this normally happens when the environment is at its most hazard. So it's inclement weather, it's night work, it's in cases of emergency where trees have gone onto roads and the like. Aerial tree work says what it is. It's where people are normally up in a mute or they are ascending or descending from ropes in trees. We have a simple one of tree planting, and there's a lot of knowledge that goes into tree planting. We'll jump onto tree rigging as well. That goes similar hand in hand with aerial tree works. And there's what we call mandatory requirements. Mandatory requirements are the core criteria required by SSIP. Now, tree surveying is quite a hot topic. Tree surveying, there's a lot of issues where trees are block surveyed in a small amount of time, and that can result in issues where trees aren't truly looked at and then accidents result from an incorrect survey. So again, all SafeArb audits consists of the mandatory requirements and one or more of the disciplines that are on the left-hand side of the screen. The mandatory requirements can be omitted if the organisation already holds another SSIP scheme. And that's because we don't have to duplicate, and that also has time and cost savings for the organisation when going for SafeArb. So when we look at SafeArb, it's all about the cultivation, management and study of individual trees and shrubs and other perennial woody plants. In essence, we look at it more for amenity trees. So we're looking at local authorities or arborist organisations who deal with trees on highways or on what we call pavements and in public parks and in schools and the like. So we refer to that as amenity trees. And it's also important for the aesthetic, environment and property values in urban and suburban settings. Again, professionals in this field are known as arborists, or what most people know them as is a tree surgeon. And they require knowledges in the areas of biology, ecology, pathology, entomology, and soil sciences to effectively care for those trees. So, arboriculture activities are carried out in a variety of settings. A lot of them is in suburban and urban areas, cities, towns, especially on the streets that are lined with trees, public parks, and the likes. We also have arborist work in residential properties. You might find a householder would like a tree removed from the garden. Some trees are really big and you want to get a qualified person to remove that tree. If it's just removed by anyone, the tree could fall onto property and damage the property. Again, we have commercial and institutional properties such as universities and hospitals. And all of these companies, including housing associations, local authorities, a lot of them have arborists who work for them full time. Sometimes they'll use subcontracted arborists, and other times they'll subcontract the whole process out to an arborist organisation. Roadsides and public rights-of-way carry the highest risks with arborists, especially the removal of the trees. There's many dangers on working on the roadsides, both from traffic and from the risks of falling trees and branches into the public rights-of-way and onto the public itself. Conversely, historical sites and conservations have it. They come with their own rules and regulations. And the historical sites tend to use fully qualified arborists to look after the trees on their properties. As you know, there was a historical site that had a tree chopped down not long ago along Hadrian's Wall, and that was not done by a qualified arborist, and it ended up damaging the Hadrian's Wall itself. Moving on. Risks in each of the settings. Now, this is quite important because safety risks in the urban and suburban is falling branches, and we did touch on this slightly just before, but there is equipment like chainsaws, and you've got your stump grinders and the like, and there's also legal risks, especially third party and public liability, so damage to public private property and to persons themselves. In residential properties, they carry similar risks, but the risks are slightly different. So risks to the arborists from falls, equipment accidents, the risks to homeowners and residents from falling debris or the like. Again, legal risks tends to go into third party, property damages, and the like. Residential risks and commercial risks, institutional properties are very, very similar. So when you look at all these risks and all these settings, the risks are similar, but some of the settings have higher risks than others. Again, public parks and gardens, it's a major public concern, especially with the high trafficked areas and where children are playing and bodies of water. Again, the legal risks are compliance with public safety standards and environmental regulations. The trees might have TPOs, you know, it might be a conservation area and the like. Roadways and rights of way. The risks come a lot from traffic in roadsides, especially when working on the pavement. You might have to put a defile in. So you've got some traffic management required when you're dealing with trees on the roadside, especially if you're working with stump grinders or you're felling a tree. There's additional requirements required. And there's an additional risk of weather conditions. Historical sites and conservation. Again, preservation of the site can be complicated operations, and this could be due to the terrain or restricted working methods. Again, on these conservation sites and historical sites, there might be TPOs in place or tree preservation orders in place that protect certain trees. Again, the legal risks for historical sites is compliance with conservation laws and regulations, and the potential liability of damage to historically or culturally significant trees. So the risks to the arborists. I have a saying, one accident is too many. In the year 2020 to 2021, the HSEF put out that there was 5 fatalities, 187 specified accidents, and 329 over 7-day accidents. Accidents are quite prevalent, and a lot of the accidents that happen in arborists happen to arborists are serious accidents. They're not just a cut finger. They can be an amputation. They can be a fatality. So most accidents are of a serious nature. So risks to the arborist. The use of machinery in arboriculture, as in any field involving physical labour and equipment, carries various risks to the arborist, particularly in the UK, where specific health and safety regulations must be adhered to. So if there is any international visitors to this webinar is directed to the UK market and the UK legislation. Some of the common risks associated with different types of machinery typically used by the arborists. There's also injuries, cuts and lacerations, and kickback from chainsaws, where a lot of the injuries do happen from. There is some preventative measures. There's equipment like chainsaw trousers, the correct PPE, the correct helmet, the correct climbing equipment, position harnesses, and Lola and Pure come into this in a very big way, looking after and maintaining the equipment. So chainsaw injuries, cuts and lacerations from the chainsaw, kickback injuries, and hearing damage from prolonged exposure to noise. Good hearing protection is fundamental, as with the chainsaw gloves and trousers, and the correct helmet, especially. One of the biggest things on chainsaws is that the chainsaw guard at the bottom is missing. So those things need to be looked at constantly, and daily checks should happen. Wood chippers in the United Kingdom are slightly smaller than the wood chippers in the US. However, they don't offer any less danger. The wood chippers, there are stories of incidences where persons have been consumed by wood chippers due to incorrect usage. So preventative measures such as training, the use of guards and emergency shut-off systems is paramount. And where possible, there should be 2 or more persons present when the use of the wood chipper, to ensure that there's somebody there in case somebody gets into difficulty. Stump grinders is a beast of a machine. They, as they say, they take out the stump from a ground. There is some risks involved there, especially if research hasn't been done with the cat and Jenny to make sure there's no electrical lines running near the tree or the likes. These things have big teeth on it, and they'll just rip the stump into small pieces. But it has the ability to go through any civil works that are in the vicinity as well. Again, the use of protective screens for the public, so there's no flying debris into the public path, PPE including eye and ear protection, and ensuring the work area is clear of bystanders. In this, you should always cordon off the area to ensure that there's no injury possible to anyone else. Aerial lifts and cherry pickers are used quite extensively by arborists. They're either attached to the back of the vehicle that they drive, or they'll get in a separate MUP to do a certain job. Now, during the job, this MUP can move around the tree and be placed in various positions as well. So there is common risks of falls from height. And in here, you need a restraint device such as a harness and a restraint lanyard, so that you can't drop more than 1 meter. Equipment collapses and malfunctions from the device. So in here, you really need a lot of training, definitely a lot of training for the use of MUPs and suitable and sufficient risk assessments and or method statements, whatever the organization uses. What you see on your screen here is a simple work harness for an arborist with some climbing equipment. There is the 2-rope method that's currently in place that should be adhered to. And one of the things we always say to arborists is they should have a good supply of first aid equipment, including trauma bandages available at hand. So it's no use leaving it in your van. If you need a trauma bandage, it should be on the arborist's person at all times. So again, injury risks of falls, equipment failure, and physical strain from prolonged climbing in awkward positions. The preventative maintenance, again, it's training, it's the correct equipment. The equipment is maintained and daily checks are carried out because there's a person being suspended from a height. These are just some simple tools from where you can work from the ground, where you can have these tools attached to the poles, and it'll save you the climb. And it's a lot safer to work with these. However, you have to take into account falls of tree branches once you're pruning and the like. Again, proper maintenance comes into place. Some of the accidents that are very rarely touched on is vehicles and trailers. So a lot in arborism, there's a lot of accidents that happen through the activity of the arborist. What's not really touched on is traffic accidents and trailer accidents, because that doesn't come under the HSE, that comes under the police. The correct use of a trailer and the correct use of the vehicle is paramount, especially when towing the likes of a stump grinder on the back of a trailer. The trailer needs to be able to carry the correct weight of the implement that you're carrying. It needs to be serviceable, and it needs to be in good condition all round. So again, driver training. A lot of people have never pulled a trailer before. They get in a pickup truck, they hook up a trailer, and they set off. Towing a trailer comes with its own risks and own requirements. So general safety gear for arborists include boots, chainsaw trousers, suitable and sufficient gloves, and headgear, hearing gear, and sight gear. So when we look at the maintenance of these items, this comes in quite important, that all this equipment must be kept clean and in good condition. And the risks assessments that are carried out for set tasks within arboriculture should include the correct type of PPE to be worn for those tasks. Moving on. So let's let's look a little bit at the regulations and guidance. In the UK, we have various pieces of legislation, and they are all pertinent to arboriculture. So the Health and Safety at Work Act is an old act, and it's an act that provides for other regulations and acts to be added into it. So the management of health and safety regulations, those are required for risk assessments and for health and safety arrangements to be put in place. With arborists, we work a lot at height, so the work at height regulations comes in. And we also need risk assessments. And all these regulations, if your organisation is suitably and sufficiently trained with professionals in writing risk assessments, all this legislation will be taken into account. The provision of and use of work equipment regulations really comes into its own for the equipment that you use. So again, you should have a process that records all your equipment, your maintenance regime, and when it was last checked, and if required under your insurance's schedule. Lola, again, Lola is required for any lifting equipment, and that again will come under your insurance requirements. We also have the control of hazardous substances. You might be using chemicals, it might be fuel, it might be pesticides or herbicides, and the like. So in arboriculture, we use all of those items. So the control of substance hazard to health does come into play. And with that should come risk assessments and possibly health monitoring of your organisation as well. The PPE regulations comes into place. As you've seen, we've gone through quite a bit on PPE previously in this webinar, and you've seen the types of PPE that arborists use. Now, arborist PPE is quite specific to arboriculture. It's not a standard hard hat you'd use or standard overall trousers. They are specifically designed to jam up a chainsaw if it catches your leg. Now, all this PPE is an aid to stop you getting injured. It doesn't mean you won't get injured, but it mitigates the chances of getting injured. If the tools are used correctly and you've got the correct PPE on, it should work in your favour. Then we go on to some British standards. Now, whilst British standards isn't law, it is guidance, and it can be seen as such. So we've got 3998, which is to do with tree work, and that's all about recommendations about the guidance and management of trees and tree felling and possibly pruning. When we move on to trees in relation to design and demolition and construction, we're looking at 5837. And the numbers at the end that I'm not reading out is just the latest version of that document. So it might be that next year another version comes out and it might be 2025. Okay. When we look at 8545, we're looking at trees from nurseries to independence in the landscape. So this is all about it being brought up in a nursery, it's been planted, and then it's established. And we're looking at the care of that tree as well in location. On top of the safety legislation that is out there and guidance and British standards, we also have some legislation to do with environmental issues. And this environmental is the Wildlife and Countryside Act. Again, it's important for arborists to be aware of this. And the Act covers flora, fauna, and the relevant and can be relevant when working with trees that may have habitats for protected species. We have the Environmental Protection Act. This act includes provisions related to waste management, which can be relevant in the disposal of tree materials, mulching, and the like. There is an advisory group out there that does deal with the health and safety executive, and that's called AFAG, or the Arboriculture and Forestry Advisory Group. So Arboriculture comes under forestry, and that also comes under agriculture. So although it's not a legislative body, they are the leaders and provide series of guidelines, and they are very well respected in industry for safe working practices in arboriculture. And it is worth anyone to go on, if anyone's interested, to go onto their website and have a look at some of the guidance they do put out. So now we're going to lead on to some of the hot topics. Tree surveying. Tree surveying is hot because of some of the recent incidences where people have had fatalities in the public. So we've had children and adults killed by falling trees that have been surveyed, but either not been surveyed correctly, or if they have been surveyed correctly, no further action has been taken on the recommendations from that survey. And a point in case, a young 6-year-old girl was killed when a tree fell on her, and the local authority was fined £280,000. That doesn't bring that 6-year-old back. So for the want of a proper survey and the corrective actions taken from the recommendations from that survey, it's extremely important. And because of this importance, we look to approve tree surveyors through a peer review system. That would be if a tree surveyor wants approval from a SafeArb approval, we will look at several of their jobs in the past. They will then have an interview with 3 people minimum on a board. And those will be somebody from industry. There'll be an academic professional, and there will also be an inspection body professional, and as a minimum. And then we will, after the interview, make our notes, and then we'll go back to the delegate within a week or so and tell them if they're successful in being approved as a tree surveyor on the SafeArb list, or they have further work to do. Another hot topic is reactive response. Reactive response is dangerous for many reasons. One of the biggest reasons is it's inclement weather. And any safe systems of work and risk assessments that you might have in place to mitigate any danger isn't always applicable, because this is where you will turn up to an incident and you have to remove a fallen tree that might be in a precarious position, and the training and the risk assessments you have don't cover that task. So here it's really good for the lead person in that response team to be able to carry out dynamic risk assessments as well, and document those dynamic risk assessments before any movements have been made on the tree. So some of the aggravating factors include inclement weather, the types of the incident itself, whether it's dark hours or daylight, and other interested parties. And there are other interested parties that turn out to these. It might be the police, it might be the fire brigade, there might be a fallen tree on a person, so you will have the ambulance service there. So there's a lot to take into account on reactive response. When an organization applies for reactive response as a discipline with us, we look at all of their risk assessments, method statements, and they also go through scenario-based questioning to find out how they would deal with the interested parties and certain types of incidences, just to ensure and give us confidence that they can actually carry out reactive response safely and correctly. So that brings me to a finish for this webinar. So if you'd like to take, if anyone is interested, please do take a snapshot of the screen. I'm happy to take some questions now, if there is any questions. And if you want to ask me a question personally, please feel free to send an email to safearb@3core2.co.uk. And anyone here will be able to speak to you and we have an ARB specialist sat with me now. So if there's any technical questions you need answering, we can also answer that for you. But I'd like to thank you very much for attending this this webinar, and I'll hand back over to Michelle now. Thank you.
Thanks, Don. Well done. Really interesting. I think
You're on mute.
I'm off mute. Should be off.
Yeah, I can hear you, Michelle.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much, Don, for giving us the time today to go through that. And I think anyone who's dealing with that as part of the day jobs, as I do, we have a tree team who work for us at Onward. And it's a good timely refresher, I think, for people to review what they've got in place, and for safety people to, you know, refresh their memories on, you know, the standards. And I think it's really good to go into depth about the SSIP as well. So as you said before, we've shared the details there. You can contact any one of us through LinkedIn, or, you know, I think it's going to be shared, isn't it, Don? We're going to put this on our...
I believe IIRSM is going to put this up
Yeah.
on their website or their YouTube channel or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So for reference, like say, if you do want to ask any questions, so let me just go into the Q&A now. Right. So there's no open questions there on the Q&A. So if anybody's on and like to ask a question, if you want to unmute yourself or put your hand up, like I say, okay, got some thank yous coming. If we look distracted, I'm just reading the chat as we're talking. So there's no formal questions there. So I'm taking it most people on the call will have took down your details, Don, to come back to you individually if they want any details about, you know, the audits that you carry out in line with SSIP.
Yeah, anything, any question, whether it's relating to SafeArb or just a general question, please feel free to come to me.
Brilliant. So thank you so much, everyone, who's took the time to attend today. For some reason, my video's off. Yeah, so if there's anybody who needs to contact Don, please do reach out. Thank you for joining us, and all our events that are going forward will be on the IIRSM website under events. So thank you all, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Don. Bye.